Well, thanks so much for being here, and thanks to everyone who's online. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are in the world. So this little event is hosted by Tsadra Foundation, a nonprofit that began in New York City in the year 2000 with Eric Colombo and Drukyu Anthony Chapman. And since the year 2000, we've funded over 144 different translations from Tibetan, primarily. So those of you who are here can see those all on the back wall. And we can do a tour of the library and stuff later. Along with translations, though, we also support people in 3-year retreat, long-term study in Shedras, traditional Shedras in Asia, and a number of other programs. Like here in this office, we have a research department where we're building all kinds of online resources for translators and students and scholars. Hopefully they're helpful. Please check out buddhanature.org. We've been having a lot of fun with that one. And soon we will be launching Shantideva resource, the largest online resource for anything to do with Shantideva. Too much Shantideva, likely. Can't have too much Shantideva. It's wonderful. So this evening, we're extremely grateful that Sarah has agreed to give us a talk here on Chöd. So I'm just going to read a little bit from my notes so that I don't say all the wrong things. The first thing I know I'm not supposed to say is that Sarah Harding is a master translator. Shanka tradition. Yes, I know you always get upset if I say anything good about you, but actually it's really special.
Too much to live up to.
No, it's really special to have you here and to have this moment with you. We don't often get to do that. So Sarah became a student of Kalu Rinpoche in the 1970s and completed the first 3-year retreat for Westerners at Kagyu Ling in France, 1976 to 1980, and later served as translator at Kagyu Shenpen Kunkyab. In Santa Fe, she was a founding member of Kalu Rinpoche's International Translation Group in 1987 and has taught the Tibetan language to hundreds of students over the years, including me, and Holly, here, and a few others, including creating a popular Tibetan language correspondence course. She's done extensive oral translation internationally for such renowned teachers as Kalu Rinpoche, Chagyu Toku, Tenga Rinpoche, Khenpo Tsotrung Gyamtso, Trungpa Rinpoche, Ganten Rinpoche, and others. She retired from Naropa University way back in 2018 after 26 years of service.
Minus a year.
She continues her written translation work from her home here in Boulder, Colorado. And she's been a Tsadra Foundation Fellow since the year 2000 when we were founded. So I'm really grateful that you're here. Please, without further ado, share with us a bit about your work and about Chöd.
Thank you, Marcus. Marcus is the executive director. I feel like now I have to praise Marcus.
No.
Too hard. Those are the great scholars there in the lab. They're all master translators. Holly is also a master translator, so no big deal. Thanks all for coming, and for those other unseen beings that are watching. It kind of reminds me, like in India and in time of the Buddha, and even in Tibet, where they'd always there'd be the song of Arhats and the song of Bodhisattvas. And now there's the Zoom Sangha.
That's right.
Gods and Gandharvas, and they're all out there, but I can't see you. Just assume that you're there. Hope that whatever I say is work in your language. Welcome. All the invisible spirits are welcome to the feast. There's another one here. I first started my interest in Chöd, in Severance, when in the retreat. It was the final practice at the end of the day for about the first year. And I think that initially I really loved it because, all the other practices can get kind of dull and repetitive, but Chöd was like, wake up at night and drums and play and singing and, one of the things I love about Tibetan Buddhism in general, but specifically Chöd, that was my first attraction, was that all of all of your creative anything, you can pull it into the practice. You know, the tormas are kind of like pottery, and then there's painting, and then there's singing and playing instruments and everything like that. And I feel like that's really great. Instead of eliminating all the parts of yourself just to, be doing like, whatever shamatha or something, you're pulling in all parts of yourself, even parts that you maybe wouldn't. I mean, I would have never in my life would I sing in public, but in my little cell in some farm in France, it was actually pretty liberating. So that was my first attraction to it. And I think that actually remains the case in these times. There's a lot of people like those rituals and all the different parts. And then the next thing, after studying it a little, and we went through, and there wasn't much studying in the 3 retreat, but we did study what's called the Machik Namshe, which I translated later as the complete explanation. And that made me appreciate that it's a female lineage, that it's an indigenous Tibetan lineage, and that it's a mob lineage. And, all the teachings in that book were, in the explanation, are Machik, which I wish I could translate as single mother, because that's literally a translation of it, Machik, but are given to her children, which is an amazing, format to do, so that was the note. I pursued that as a thing. And then, but I have to say at this point, my main kind of appreciation of Chöd is that it's about fear. And what else is about fear? What other practice is specifically about fear? There really isn't any. And I think that's such a glaring kind of like mistake. Like all the klesha, so-called kleshas, all the afflictive emotions and anger and desire and everything, at the bottom it's fear. Every time, if you especially the fear of losing yourself, and worse, the fear of like discovering you weren't there in the first place, that kind of not itself, like that. We fight against that. All those emotions and kleshas and everything are in order to not see that. So I think that is pretty interesting. This one, and that it's, a Tibetan, an indigenous woman of Tibet, not something brought from India, particularly, although they do, they try and fudge that, because that's, can't have that. But, and anyway, so that's my interest in it now. And so, I'm still interested in all the other things too. I have to read this part or look at it because, so I don't mean this to be like a plug that you have to buy my books, but you can. The first thing, so way long ago, Machik's complete explanation, I think I started it in about 1985, actually. And then there were so many obstacles and I didn't have support for it. It was Kalu Rinpoche, previous Kalu Rinpoche, Ramchan Kunkyab asked me to do it. And, but it was, I worked with Chakta Rinpoche, and I just took it out by hand, on yellow legal paper. I don't know if you even know what that is anymore. And anyway, it all fell apart until Tsadra Foundation rescued me in 2000 from my single mother poverty. And I was able to complete it in 2003. So we published that in 2003. That was an amazing experience to do that. And I was doing the practice and living up in the Boulder Heights at the time. And I did the practice all the time. I was translating it, but I still was like, boy, if I knew then what I know now, and I really should redo it. But anyway, like I said, it has this format of her speaking to her children, and also that it's like, it's just a kind of a brilliant book, but
it's all written as a kind of like, and then from Machik's mouth, she said this, you know, or that. And I really took it literally. And it's like, this is what Machik taught. And then it's not. It was written, you know, several generations of male lineage holders later, possibly remotely related by, you know, by blood to her. But, and it's, you know, it's what people remember or what they want it to be or whatever, you know, it's still, I feel like a lot comes through still. I mean, and it's a great story, but then I did, let's see what it was next. And the other thing I want to just say that this was this has been true, maybe not only of Chöd, but of almost everything is like, Machik's complete explanation so seamlessly goes between a very literal interpretation right down to not only what the spirits look like, but what their horses look like and what color the fetlocks of the horses are and what, you know, all these different literal things. And at the same time saying, well, they don't all exist and it's in your mind and it's a hallucination and everything. At the same back and forth, seamless. That's what's really amazing. And that has been throughout. Then we did the Treasury of Knowledge by Jamyang Gönpo, which is the part which is out back there. And there's 10 volumes and I was assigned esoteric instructions. Kalu Rinpoche would think that, you know, monastics couldn't translate that part. So he did it to me. And within that is Jamyang Gönpo. This is now 19th century scheme, you know, of 8 practice lineages, which I probably talked too much about. And in that there's Chöd, not one of the main 8 practices. The practice lineages is this, I don't know, there's a lot to be said about how that developed, and Gönpo wasn't the first person to think of it, but he really developed it because it kind of as a response to the academic manuals that were being developed in the Gelugpa monasteries in central Tibet. And so he thought to go back to India. So the 8 practice lineages each go back, have the source in India, like very specifically a source. But not Machik's, not Chöd, because that was kind of relegated to being a subcategory of Shije, which is a lineage started by Dampa Sangye, a South Indian man who came to Tibet. And anyway, yeah, I still haven't gotten over that it's not, you know, it's a little lineage, but, and I don't, well, I'll say more about that in a minute. So I translated that, which was really hard because it was 8 different, you know, whole systems of practice, whole kind of things. And that's also something I'm pretty embarrassed and should redo it, but well, anyway, I think they redid it in French. Maybe read the French version. Anyway, that was Gönpo's own writing. And that scheme in that one book of the 8 practice lineages was kind of like the outline for the whole next project, which is the Treasury of Precious Instructions, which is not written by him, but collected by him. It's compiled. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So that, so the Treasury of Knowledge came out in 2007. All of this sponsored by Knight in Shining Armor. And then I did the Treasury of Knowledge, and I did the first volume I did in that. And Gönpo had a lot of his own writings in also Khyentse Wangpo. In fact, I was hoping that, you know, somebody, Greg, would count sometime how much is by Khyentse Wangpo, because it's really a lot. So those guys were all collaborating in Eastern Tibet. And then, so these are all anthologies. So they're a little bit all over the place. And they're hard to work with. But the thing is, you really get the lay of the land when you do an anthology with like 40 different texts by different people. You know, you get and what I started to notice when I did that first one, which came out in, it's the dates that I can't remember. 2016, and it's volume 14. And I did it before, I couldn't wait to do Chöd, you know, really I should have done the Shijie first, but I jumped right into that. So I'm sorry, I hope this isn't too nerdy for everybody, but the Könpo, each of the volumes of the Treasury of Precious Instructions has 3 parts, and the first part is always on source texts. And then there's the like instructions, and then there's the empowerments. So it has this kind of like, the source texts were Machik's work. All of them are attributed to Machik. And our guy, Jamyang Gönpo, which I will eventually talk about, which is the book that I just translated. And there was like no, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Chöd practice, but there was no, like almost no stuff about like doing the bell and the dorje and the cutting up the body and, you know, the whole visualization of gods and demons. And like, I was like so surprised, like what, wait, where is this practice that I did in the retreat and that we all did and that everybody thinks is Chöd, you know, is Severance, and why isn't it in there in these source texts by Machik Lapdrön from the 11th, 12th century? You know, where did it, how did it turn into this other thing? So I wrote a paper at that time, which I think is on the Tsadra blog, about that. Like, did Machik really teach Chöd? It's called. And I translate, by the way, Chöd as Severance, in case you didn't figure that out. So that kind of perked my interest a lot. I mean, there's certainly plenty of talk about devils and demons and spirits and gods and stuff. There's no doubt about that, that she was, you know, really kind of over to the dark side. She picked up on the all the talk about, I translate, I just want to differentiate so you know what I'm talking. I translate what is in Sanskrit Mara or dude as devil because it fits perfectly. And if I have to defend that with you, I will. And then Dre is another word as demons, or Pladre, gods and demons, or god demons, because they're different. Anyway, she got, you know, very hung up on the sections in the Perfection of Wisdom teachings, the Prajnaparamita, on the sections that are about Maras, about devils, and specifically, you know, the devil that comes to tempt the Buddha at the time of enlightenment with his daughters and weapons and things. And it's never definitively identified which exact place there's a lot of possibilities. I think that's in Machik's. I can't remember where I wrote about that, but I put down all the possibilities and nobody knows. But anyway, she was hung up about it. And she really came to kind of grips with it through her, you know, her life of realization eventually, I think. But anyway, it didn't involve the kind of gruesome, like I was used to, for instance, in our retreat, Jamyang Gönpo, a text that's in that Chöd volume called, I call Beloved Garden, also previously translated as Garden of Joy or something. But Dejang Rinpoche told me his name was Kunga, and he said it's Kunkyab, not Garden of Joy, just defense. I will always quote Dejang Rinpoche if I can. So anyway, we did that whole part so detailed on like how to, you know, chop up the body and how to prepare it, and for which demons like it cooked and which ones like it raw and which one thing. And you can make little sushi things, or you can make like, you know, like bones with the skin flying on them and all this kind of thing. Where did that come from? It's not in Machik at all. You know, basically there's no ritual. It was so surprising. After that, I did the volume on Shijie. And my other surprise about that, and it's very hard to do Shijie, no one's practicing it really. He brought a Dampa Sangye brought this like brilliant method of all these many practices into Tibet, but no one really practices them. And people who do are actually practicing Chöd by Machik, because there is nothing on Chöd by Dampa Sangye that's just not there. You know, through Tsadra Foundation sponsored 13 volumes from Tulshik Rinpoche's library on Shije and Chöd, and there's nothing in Shije on Chöd, which is kind of weird because it's attributed to Dampa Sangye. Because we couldn't have a Tibetan woman, right? Finding making a good Dharma thing. We'd have to be a man, and he'd have to be Indian. Anyway, and then that, and then what else was there? Then we did, well, when I sort of, oh yeah, then there was the 4 Tibetan lineages, which also is both Shije and Chö in it, which I did for the Library of Tibetan Classical somethings, LOTC, Library of Tibetan Classics. Thupten Jinpa, he put, it's pretty much similar material, except Thupten put in some Gelugpa sources, which was interesting. And then after I recovered from 2 more volumes of the Shenpen Kagyu, finally I got permission to not do an anthology. And this is what I chose, which is the one I want to talk about. Sorry, was that too long of a preamble? No. Already lost my words. Okay. So in the Treasury of Precious Instructions, volume 14, there's one text which is called, I'll read you the whole. So this is gonna just give you a hint about everything I say, because I want to read the whole title of it. It's called The Heart Essence of Profound Meaning, the quintessence of all source texts and esoteric instructions of Severance, the perfection of wisdom. And that's the really important part. And people had always, lamas had always said, in fact, I remember Khenpo Soljam, as soon as I said Chöd, he goes, oh, perfection of wisdom. It was like, and I always wondered, it seems so tantric, it seems so Vajrayana. Why is this second turning and not third turning even on Buddha nature, or specifically Tantrayana? And now I think I kind of get that, what's going on in my theory, which started way back, which is that originally it was really Prajnaparamita. And that also makes sense with Dampa Sangye, because he was all about perfection of wisdom sutras, the Mahayana, the basis of all Mahayana literature, which is the perfection of wisdom sutras. What are they, 33 or 30, there's the mother and child versions, I think 11 mothers and 8 sons, or I can't remember, lots of them. And most people know the Heart Sutra. So if you don't really need to go further than that, because it says everything. So, oh, and here's one more thing that I noticed, because I would always get multiple copies if I could, witnesses of each text I translate. Some of them, the same text, otherwise identical, would have a different spelling for the same sound, which is Chöd. And this is going to be weird if you, but it'd be okay for the Tibetans. So Chöd is spelled Gao, no Chota Chöd. The other spelling they used is Sapatapaya de Chana Chota Chöd. Wow. Same sound, meaning conduct, meaning activities or conduct. Charya in Sanskrit. And Charya is all over the Prajnaparamita literature. I mean, they hardly go one sentence without it. And if you, as old as me, and we had to read the earliest translations of that, you'd be like, how does a bodhisattva, what was it? In the course of the wisdom of the Prajna, how does it, that's translating Charya, the activity. So that was really surprising to see that. How is that, and conduct is a huge word in the Tibetan Buddhist milieu of practice. You'll hear it with like view meditation and sometimes action or conduct. There's also like there's all these different conducts. And I personally, this is just the theory to throw out there, but aside from the theory that Machik didn't really teach Severance, but which is that what that means in the terms like of the perfection of wisdom is you do view, you study you study the philosophy, and then you meditate on emptiness and compassion and the basis of Mahayana as taught in the perfection of wisdom literature. And when you come to some kind of realization, maybe of emptiness, or you think you have to try, right? You think you have, then you put it to the test in conduct. You go out and see how, if that really did it work, or not. And it did remind me, I don't know, I took a lot of, aside from studying with Kalu and Tulku Urgyen and people like that, I also studied with Lama Yeshe, the Lupa Lama in Kathmandu, and they really give beginning teachings forever. And always told this story of, practicing the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections of a bodhisattva. And one of them is patience. And I don't know if any of you have heard this story of all right, you meditate on patience for a really, really long time. And then what do? Well, you go to the marketplace or the mercado. I'm trying to think of those, like the Bhutanese marketplace, it's a special place. And then you act crazy and yell terrible things at people. And if it's anything like the Bhutanese marketplace, they hit you and kick you and call you names and throw you out, because there's always bears at the marketplace that are crazy. That's how crazy people are treated. And then you see, how patient were you? Are you still patient when that happens? So you purposely go out. So this is throughout the different practices. It's not just unique to Chöd, but Chöd takes it to its nuclear conduct, So I was gonna look at some of these things, but I don't know if I can. Anyway, so I chose, when I finally had a choice, to translate. When I did that with the long name that I read you, that's the verses that are in the Chöd volume of the Treasure of Precious Instruction, and that's the thing. I had found a big commentary on it to help me translate that originally, so I decided to make a book of that, and that's what I did. Is going to come out in summer, maybe, publishing houses. But anyway, it's there. They're done. They've edited it, And so the reason I chose that is because it really seemed to confirm my suspicion that early teachings on Chöd didn't have this whole dramatic, fun part of the practice, that it was much closer to actually just seeing how is your realization of emptiness, how is your realization of prajnaparamita, did it work? And then you really wouldn't even want to go out and try it if you didn't have some introductions and practice and stuff like that. And so it's a charya, it's a conduct, it's a testing ground, it's like field work, I guess, if you had a PhD, which I don't, so I wouldn't know, but it's like checking it out, like going to the market and acting crazy. Only it's very, very pointedly about fear, your fears specifically. I think I don't want to be making some stereotype, but it would seem from this literature that a really big fear of the Tibetan people was unseen beings, unseen spirits, and gods and demons, so-called gods and demons. Gods, not like gods, like deities, but who shouldn't be all that scary, although some of them are. But what goes bump in the night? What's out there that you can't see? And that, developed this whole thing. And it definitely Machik and Jamyang Gönpo, who's the author of this text that I translated, that's, where they geared their direction and their instruction is once you've had the introduction and practiced on the nature of mind, to go out and test it by going to haunted places, by going to scary places, wherever you can find them, which seems to be, there's a few instructions in it on going to, places where there's contagion and sickness and so on, but most of it is having to do with demons and gods. And so we have to kind of look at that. Anyway, Jamyang Gönpo was born in 2008, and that's earlier than everyone always pretty much in the church world thinks that the third Karmapa Ranchen Dorje was the kind of first commentator on Chöd, but Jamyang Gönpo predates him, and this is still a living lineage held by.
What year did you say?
Yeah, you said 2008.
He was born in 2000. Thank you. 1208.
12.
Thank you.
And very interesting character. They don't have a death date for him because he went off to what's it called? Wutashan, 3-peak mountain in China, and attained disappeared, rainbow body or whatever. So they don't have a death date, but he was famously a lineage holder for the Lower Drukpa, a subsect of Drukpa Kagyu, the Lower Drukpa specifically, and his teacher was Lorepa, who is the founder of the Drukpa Kagyu, Lower Drukpa Kagyu, Drukmen. And but very little of his work in that lineage. Only one text kind of remains, which is on the 5 capabilities, Tuba. But then he has a lot of literature on Chöd. And he also studied with the son of Machik Lapdrön, Gyalwa Döndrup, who became the main lineage holder for Machik, bypassing the 4 daughters. But anyway, so that's a very direct, that's really early, that's Machik's own son who received all her teachings, and then he heard them from him. And also, I'm saying all this and all this as preparations of maybe too much, but he said the reason that only his text is included with Machik by Jamyang Gönpo as source text, Machik's, which most of them aren't really by Machik, and you can tell it's really easy, but and his text is because he also had visions of her, who hasn't, right? Me, I am. But anyway, so he's considered that close, that close to Machik that except for a few later, several generations later, someone who claimed it with the same name, and don't get me started on him. Because I was so confused on who wrote what, because it's the same name, totally different person. And people make claims, it goes on and on. That's why I don't like the claiming the names Lama and Master Translator. Everybody's ruined it for me. Anyway, so his text, this one, I called they want to call it's going to be called by the publisher, Wisdom is going to be called, I can't even remember. Oh, Severance, the early practice of Chöd. Severance, which was kind of redundant. But anyway, the main one I wanted, they translate, I call it the Big General Guide. And it is a big general guide, exactly what it is. And remember that before, at this time in the 13th century, that early, very early, there wasn't a rigid sectarian kind of, this is Kagyu, this is good, this is it. It was for everybody, this commentary. And it still is. And there's no liturgy of any particular lineage in it. It's about 100 pages or more. And anyone could use it as a commentary for their practice, no matter what lineage, even if it's there's also Terma lineages of Chöd and Gönpo lineages of Chöd, and everybody got Chöd. I mean, really almost every later school, or sect has some element of Chöd, and yet it stands outside of the Gomrim, the Lamrim of each school. Like, it's not really Tantra. Do you need an empowerment or not? They had to make up empowerments way later. Is it Sutra? Is it Tantra? It's kind of like its own thing. And that made it easy for any group to kind of incorporate it. And also it didn't have monasteries. It didn't develop its own. There's wandering mendicant style thing. Didn't have monasteries. So it made it pretty easy to incorporate. And it's like massive amount of literature on Chöd. Everybody and their uncle has written something on Chöd. It's just like endless and confusing, which is why I really gravitate towards the earliest, to kind of before it got like out of hand. And it was so interesting. Let me read you just one thing that he wrote, which just gives you his version of his own writing, Jamyang Gönpo. It says, these days, all the instructions of severance may be subsumed into one, the experience of all severance adepts rolled together, and the advice of all gurus wrapped up in a single place and sealed. These instructions include the whole extent of the severance cycle taught by the Lord Mother, with nothing left out. It is presented as 3 subjects: the presentation as a general guide, the big general guide, the extension as an experiential guide, which is called a Nyamtri, which is, I also translated in this book that's coming out, which is a 7-day specific instruction on how to practice every day for 7 days. And finally, the instructions as personal advice, Shaldam, which I didn't translate yet. But yeah, that one is very detailed. But it's really interesting that later on he says that you can't go on to the Shaldam until you've, in a way he says, like thrown out or put aside the other instructions. Like, in other words, until they're so integrated and interiorized that then you can go on to these other ones. They're suddenly they're involving things like yogas and stuff, weird stuff. Okay, so I don't know. I kind of copied a lot of quotes because they're so cool, but I don't know if I need, maybe that's too boring to read. But I'll read some of them. That's interesting. Are there any questions yet? Should I? Yeah, Sarah.
I'm curious, when did the ritual emerge?
Yeah, everybody's curious about that. I mean, like, unresolved. Yeah. I mean, I've been wondering about that for ages. Thanks for asking. It's a common thing to think that, I mean, certainly by the time, let's put it this way, certainly by the time of Rangchen Dorje, it was there. So maybe he did, I don't know, or maybe it just seeped in, but it's been common all this time to kind of say, oh, it's kind of maybe from Bumpo, Bun. But I think Bun, except for later Bun, which mirrors Buddhism, the advent of Buddhism in Tibet, is kind of Bun. Saying Bun, it's like saying Tibetan culture. It's just the culture. It's not a religious system. It was the culture there, and certainly to come into it. But I personally think also there's some very good reasons, smart reasons that the body practice was put in. And it is mentioned. I don't want to say like nobody ever thought of it. There's plenty in Jamyang Gönpo's work and even in Machik's where it's like, go to where you're afraid. And then of course, where you're afraid, if you were in 13th century Tibet, was in, haunted places where you think it's haunted by unseen beings. And then don't be scared, try to deal with it. Like, don't be scared because you don't exist. So your body is fine, and that's great. But it's a little abstract. And one of the really interesting things about this book, I don't want to lose my train of thought, so I'll finish that train of thought. Why I think it was a good idea to put in the body sacrifice and even very visceral visual cutting up of your own body and things is because really bottom line is, where do we think our self is? And I know the first time the whole retreat, I think I'm so arrogant that I didn't think I'm attached to my body, I'm just my, cleverness. I'm smart, I was like that. And when I finally practiced it again, and I did it, I think, better, it was like, whoa, we really are, no matter how clever we try and be and how emptiness, compassion, whatever stuff, it's really about the body. And it's not death. This is not a death practice meditation. It's like mutilation, sickness, demonic possession, whatever, craziness, Alzheimer's, all those things that really are terrifying. And when you really, I was like, oh, that's my hand has been chopped off, my hand. It's really a powerful, powerful practice that way. So I think it was smart, the people who was the Rangjung Dorje or whoever it was. It doesn't correspond. There is a Bun Chöd, but that doesn't necessarily predate this other Chöd. And the ideas of shamanic body sacrifice, I think, is not necessarily, that's not was in the common Tibetan culture at the time. Animal sacrifice, maybe, yeah, but not humans, and not your own, not suicidal sacrifice, So I think it was put in because, maybe because possibly some people started to think maybe there weren't really demons. Maybe that's not enough to just deal with, because half the book, 80% of the book, is like, but they don't really exist. Go to a haunted place. And it's so ironic. And then what I was talking about, holding these two extremes with this tension of the detail, and yet they don't exist. It's like, it's the same old Mahayana, trick of like, have compassion for all beings. Oh, they don't exist. How do you do that? How do you hold those two things? I spend the rest of my life working for sentient beings that don't exist. It's really just crazy. That's why Buddhists are all crazy. But and so it goes on and on. It's brilliant the way it talks about they're not real, but you think they're real, and so the whole purpose is to see your fear at them, and we might, I think, in modern practice, not necessarily choose. I live right near a cemetery, and I walk there all the time, and I'm never scared in that cemetery, because it's just like so nice and quiet and peaceful. Sometimes there's a bear, but anyway. So we might have our own. Would you go to Rocky Flats where it's all radioactive and practice Chöd, Or would you go to a place that's of contagion? And they do talk about not a lot, but there's a whole section on that's very graphic, about dealing with that kind of fear of uncleanliness and contagion and so forth. Yeah, okay, it's this. So like if someone has smallpox, this is how detailed in this book, you take the stuff from the pox and snort it. Or if someone has leprosy, you sleep in their bed. Or all the things that you never would do, you know, that like would be like really powerful practice. I think for us too, would you go in like a TB ward in a, you know, Jewish national place where they're all like terrified, even because I've been in there. But, you know, so we have different demons, different fears, but at the bottom of it, it's all kind of the same fear. You know, it's this fear of finding out that you've been faking it all this time. Right? Isn't that the main fear? That's mine. Yeah, let me read you some of the fun things. Oh yeah, I was gonna, before I do that, well, here's a definition of it from this book of Severance. It says those, after he quotes a lot of sutras, and then it's mostly Prajnaparamita, and then he says, those are all revealed in this profound severance instruction of the heart essence. It states that it is written in order to benefit all. Inwardly, the view is decisively severed. I didn't talk about that enough yet. I will. Or you could think of resolved. Decisively resolved. Meditation goals are finally severed. Adopting or discarding in conduct is severed, and hopes and fears about results are severed. Outwardly, aggravating enemies are severed. Harmful obstructors are severed. Objects of attraction and aversion are severed, and all adverse conditions are severed. Therefore, it's called severance. Luckily, I translated consistently. Yeah, one more word about the word Chöd. Why I think Tibetans started substituting Gyalwa Döndrup for Sapadapam is because it's in the vernacular, there's a lot of words that use that word Chöd that mean kind of resolved or decided, like tat chöd, you know, to cut the rope, to be absolutely certain. Once you cut a rope, you can't put the little strands back together. Or tsani chöd, to cut from the roots, to root something out. None of those have anything to do with chopping, you know, they're completely idiomatic expressions. And in the teachings of the body sacrifice, they don't use that word for chopping up the body. They use the word tup, you know, tup. Then you can say chopping or cutting, but not chöd. Chöd is not cutting. That's, I think, been a misconception due to translations in English. Because, and it took me a while. I had to like cover a lot of translation territory before I started to, oh, I get it. It's not cutting. I mean, it is cutting, but it's abstract. It's an abstract version of cutting. It's not chopping. It's not the chopping block. So he said that. And then in terms of the question of whether it's sutra or tantra, it says it severance espouses the perspective of the perfections, which is going to be second turning Mahayana. The meditation, conduct, sacred pledge, results, empowerment, and introduction to mind belong to the secret mantra practice or Vajrayana. You must follow the secret mantra for those. So it is a kind of admitting that it's both. And so the first part, it goes on at length in this book about first you need the introduction to the nature of your mind, Lower Drukpa. And that, you know, involves, that's, in other words, the practice of Prajnaparamita and recognizing it. In general, mind's essence is not a thing. It makes no sense to meditate on syllables or lights or rainbows, turning non-existence into existence. So that's kind of like a little jab at, you know, people doing Vajrayana practice without understanding. To make a non-thing into a thing is perverse. Since the mode of being of the innate disposition is empty, it is sufficient to introduce emptiness. But you might say there is no fault in doing the introduction with ah, the syllable ah, and light emanating. and returning, and then introducing no thing based on that. That's the end of that quote. Yes, there is a problem. To introduce no thingness, you don't need to introduce it based on a thing. It is enough to introduce the fact that there is absolutely nothing to depend on as a support with regard to nothingness. So that's pretty severe, almost, kind of zazen or something, you know, just shut up and sit down. Don't think. But that's important. And now I think you can see why. I mean, if we think about, so he says, oh, I just said it and it's here. It is imperative to give the introduction to the preliminaries in that way. If a practitioner arrives at the place to practice severance without having that introduction and commences giving their body, it will become a condition for obstacles, since that is the criterion for conjuring gods and demons. Gods and demons you have to read as equivalent to obstacles, normally, unless you can really apply the practice of Chöd. Right? But the other thing that's sort of amazing about, there's so much to cover. Are we done yet? 6:30.
Just started.
Oh. I could go on forever, actually. Think about, so in this particular text, it became very clear, which I can't even remember if it's not clear in other texts or I missed it, but that you go to a haunted place. Once you have that introduction and you're going to go test your realization in your meditation, and you go to the scariest place you can think of, which in that time and place was just charnel ground or a graveyard or any haunted place. There's a lot of definitions of haunted places, you know, where it's like power spots. Good old Castaneda's a power spot. You can find them, you can feel them. And you want to start to feel, first of all, you want to get an uprising. I translate it as an uprising. It's just something happens. It's not necessarily that you're seeing anything, but you feel weird. One of the students of when I was teaching this text, working, you know, conversing about this text to a group of Tara Mandala people, was someone came up with the word heebie-jeebies, which I think isn't really good. I would like to use that in my translation, but you know, people report when they think they're in the presence of a ghost or something that, you know, their hair percolates, you know, it feels like they're standing on edge, or they feel cold suddenly, or they have a smell, something kind of weird. Basically, it's fear, right? But you start to feel that. That's a good thing. You want that. And the next thing you want is to irritate whatever's causing that to the point where there's an actual apparition. You want to go have a hallucination of demons, or if you believe in them, then an actual demon manifestation. And you know, the word Ladre, gods and demons, which Machik Lapdrön in the complete explanation goes to great extent to explain. But in all these teachings, they aren't really talking about the gods, they're talking about the demons. And that's pretty intense, actually. And I have kind of wondered if the practice is pushing people to basically have a psychotic break, you know, like to have a real live hallucination, apparition, so that then they can see where they're at with it. I mean, it's an interesting injunction. And you're supposed to always go after the most horrifying conditions that you can find. All the things that we do normally spend our entire life avoiding as best we can in the practice of Chöd, according to this book, is what you're looking for. That's where you go. Whatever you're scared of. What are you most scared of? You know, some of modern teachers like Lama Tsultrim, for instance, tells people to look for what they're most scared of and then visualize it as a big, you know, monster or something. But the thing is, you don't really, you know, those don't actually exist. So there might be in other ways, but I think that's a good instruction. And But I do really think that you have to resolve. I mean, in terms of if your biggest fear is something coming from your past and your like trauma or something, I think the Russian Barmita is a better place to start. Or basically, or therapy. Both. Really, because once you get to that point, you know, if you're in the charnel ground of your own mind and memories start to happen and serious trauma comes up, that is not a good time and place, I think. That's just me. I don't think this Chöd practice solves those things. I think you have to work on that first. That's your nutra. That's your working on your own psychosis first. Then you can go and conjure up your demon again. Yeah, when you have some kind of handle on it. But there's this one line in here which has nothing to do with what I just said, but I've always related to it. About people who in modern times or in sort of different, modern times all over the world, I think, who don't so much believe in the existence, the actual existence of demons and spirits. Do we purposely conjure them up in order to then decide that they're not really there? And in the introduction, by introduction, I mean Ngotra, you know, like pointing out instruction. I don't know where that translation came from, but it's not like just like introduction to a book. It's this pointing out of their own nature. He said this, as when clouds vanish in the sky, there is no need to gather them up and then make them disappear. They will vanish wherever they are. And so, you know, if your number one fear is not spirits, then I wonder, in terms of modern practitioners, whether that's the thing you should go visualize. You know, I do wonder about that. I don't have an answer about it. I just sort of wonder, like, should we conjure them up, pretend like we think they really exist, and then just in order to practice Chöd? You know what I mean? I don't know. We could have a discussion about that. That would be interesting. I like to do that in the classes. Let me read you more fun stuff. Oh, yeah, this is important because later in Tibet, not too much later from this time, all the way to the present day, Chöd has been taken to be a healing practice. It's used as a healing ritual for people who are having some kind of difficulty, either physical sickness or mental sickness, which is, you know, in the Tibetan old system, pretty much the same thing, or any kind of like other problem. And I would just remember Khenpo Tsultrim saying, you know, one time, like, yeah, if you're going to practice Chöd, you have to take off your protection for it. It's not Machik's intention for sure. I don't mind that it's used as a healing practice because we all want to be healed, but it's like the opposite of what Chöd is. Chöd is becoming very vulnerable. Chöd is, you know, letting any, you know, feeding your demons. I mean, oh wait, that's trademarked. It is. Although I think Altoids had it first. But anyway, once you arrive at a haunted place, the blessing of the Guru and 3 jewels, the protection of the heroes and dakinis, and your meditation on Mahamudra won't work. Do not be inflated by thinking that you can handle it because you have the severance instructions. Do not harbor confidence and arrogance. There is no refuge, no protector, no confidant, no friend, no relative, no support, no backup, and no reinforcement. All alone, rest and remain there. Whatever apparitional and vicious things occur, think without inflation, I have no safe refuge or reinforcement. I can't fight, I can't escape or take care. You all can come whenever you want. You have the power, do what you like. That's what you say to those apparitions. That's pretty serious. And he goes on to quote a bunch of quotes from sutras and things saying, if you have refuge in the 3 jewels, then even the demons, millions of gazillions of demons come in, you'll be safe. So you can't go to practice this, he says, and be taking refuge or doing something like that, hoping that you're going to be okay. It makes you think, can we really do this? Can you really become that vulnerable? You might think that you must go to stay only in those places, or that it is inappropriate to remain in your own home. Although demons are not actually established as existent in those places, you have the idea that demons won't be caught at home, and that you must go out and conjure them. Then again, in the severance, there's both the severance of objective demons and the severance of the subjective mind. Though you must go to a big demon place, those demons are not the adversaries, nor are they to blame. Those demons are also not produced from that area. There's no hope that all the demons will grant spiritual powers. That's one thing people do, is train. I've had detailed instructions on how to get powers from unknown spirits from Napa Yeshe Dorje. It's quite a scene. So then why go to that haunted ground and that great demon place? Objectively, there are no demons, but subjectively, there's fixation on demons and on a self, with self-cherishing that must be severed. That, and in order to ascertain the lack of existence, is why you go to a haunted place. Based on external scary conditions, the inner consciousness that is frightened is exposed and can be thoroughly investigated. So you want to investigate your fear. And another thing about going haunted place, yeah, a lot of people want to also translate like wild place or, isolated place or alone. And then I hear a lot of modern people kind of saying, I'm not totally not scared of nature. I'm scared of humans. I've heard that a lot of times with students, well, I mean, yeah, you are. You just haven't tried it. I mean, first of all, we have lit up the world. There weren't flashlights and phone flashlights and, Starlinks and things and everywhere. We can't even get anywhere where it's actually dark, anymore. But even just a little bit, I found myself walking just like up the hill behind my house and all of a sudden it's like every little rustle of the leaves, and it's terrifying. Don't kid yourself. That it's, dark, alone, and it definitely recommends going at night to practice too, because if you go in the daytime and you're not scared, or if you go with a companion, or if you go to a place, it has all these instructions on how not to go, because you're not really going to be scared. You have to be scary, and you have to be dealing, and you have to on purpose make it worse. Well, which for them, in the Tibetan lore, making it worse means if you're getting the heebie-jeebies and stuff, you start doing these things that are environmentally and ethically really considered bad, like chopping down trees and pulling down the cliff sides and digging in the earth and disturbing all the local spirits, like making them angry and mad. And that's what you're supposed to do, so that then they come out and they're all, and then you can deal with your fear, right? Then you say, oh, no, Buddha's not going to help, Dharma's not going to help, Sangha's not going to help. You can just have to eat me. So that's all in there. There's some nice quotes. Then I just have fun stuff to read. Can I read some fun stuff?
About that, and then some questions.
Yeah, then we'll have questions, and you'll see if there's
questions.
some of the Zoom Sanghas, okay, or those unseen beings. So rather than practicing severance with demons that may or may not exist, it makes more sense to practice severance with attraction, aversion, and the 8 worldly concerns. That's something. Practice losing your most beloved person. See how you feel about that. I'm just joking. All right, here's my favorite, one of my favorite parts, because this is what I mean about. So one of the things that they say demons do is ridicule you. And you hear voices. It's not just visual hallucinations, there's audio hallucinations. And you might hear, first of all, there's the positive ones. There's 16 ridicules that the demons make. Most of those are positive, like, My protector is better than your protector. You better give up your protector because my protector is better. Or your Dharma teacher is teaching you lies. You're going to go to hell forever, so you hear like doubt, right? Doubt is happening from these things. But this one is how to keep going on the true practice no matter what. Even if you see various miraculous emanations clearly displayed, they have no body, no mind, and even no name. That's a quote from a sutra. So then there's this commentary. Whether in experiential appearance, visionary appearance, or dreams. So these are the results of seeing apparitions of demons can happen on all those three levels. For real, as a hallucination, or in dreams. There is nothing beyond magical appearance. If the sky falls from above, water gushes from the ground below, mountains crumble from behind, cliffs crack from in front, or any kind of apparitional obstacles arise, rather than saying, please guard me, please protect me 100 times, it is better to say once, kill me, eat me, take me. Rather than summoning 100 God protectors, it is better to let 1,000 God demons eat. Rest your mind in the nature of phenomena, then everything will be self-liberated. And then it goes on. Even if scratched by wild dogs from behind, pecked by birds from in front, flanked by fierce devil hordes on your right and your left, rest your mind relaxed without fear, then everything will be self-liberated. Even if a 9-headed black devil rides on your neck, ready to cut your throat and extract your heart, saying, right now I will kill you and cast away every morsel of meat and drop of blood, still rest your mind unmoving on the nature of phenomena. Then even one claw will not touch you, let alone kill you. Even if an apparition tears down the door curtain, sharpens a knife, and thrusts in a copper pot, saying, after I slaughter you, I will boil you in this copper pot. Rest your awareness in the emptiness of non-existence. Not even a needle will touch you. Even if an evil man lays out a rope on the ground and ties a noose around your neck, saying, I'm going to rope you in and drag you away, rest your mind softly upon fearlessness. You won't be dragged even one step. And then it repeats, better than one time, guard me, and so on. Even if an army of devils, messengers of the Death Lord, and millions of armed men surround you, saying, you will be entered on the devil's notched stick. The sin spirit's wager will be brought down on you. The Death Lord's scythe will fall on you. Rest your mind lightly in a state that is baseless and rootless. Rather than an army of millions of devils and Death Lords, there is not a single being near you. There is not even a footprint left by a passing individual. If you think that the gift could not have been eaten by you yourself and hold that conceit, in other words, thinking that the demons took your offering, that isn't the case. In fact, all of that is delusion, the apparitions of mind created by intellect. It is the emanation of discursive thought, the conscious creation of awareness, no different than drawings in space, the moon reflected in water, and water mirages. One cannot attribute meaning to emptiness. You need not cling to the validity of everything. You need not have doubts. You need not entertain concepts. Has anyone ever been poked by a rabbit's horn or killed by a barren woman's? That's like 5 llamas would have been. I didn't get it. It's a metaphor. It doesn't exist. The swampland. Has anyone ever been struck by the Black Lord carrying a cudgel, standing day and night at the doorway of the shrine room? All of those things cannot possibly be true. Wise ones will understand that cannot be harmed by devil armies. It states in the verse summary sutra, which is the 8,000 line Prajnaparamita, if sentient beings equal to the sands of the Ganges were all hypothetically to become devils, even emanating again as many as their body hairs, they all could not cause obstacles to the wise. So that's some of the more fun stuff of translating that book. Yeah, is that a question, Mark, or no? Oh. What?
You can answer this now if you want or not. I came upon your translation of the 4 Maras or the 4 Devils, which were fascinating. And it also occurred to me as I saw them that the world's full of them right now.
Yeah.
And it was obstructing, non-obstructing, exaltation. Could you briefly describe what those are?
I even have that in here, but that was one of the. Well, yeah, because, well, there's the so-called sutra maras, which are I'm gonna translate as devils. And it just happens to fit so well in Christian religion. There's the sutra maras, the ones that are before the Machik Solam. There's things, so first of all, Mara comes from the root of death. It means mra, it means death. And Jamie, you can't leave. No, come back. Where are you sneaking out to? Do you have a date? What?
Double booked myself.
Okay, that's Jamie, everyone.
Bye, Jamie.
Great seeing you.
All the way from Greeley. Bye, Jamie.
Bye.
Sorry. So what is death to awakening? The afflictions, kleshas, what they call divine child, which I call being like super spoiled. You think you're just too happy to practice Dharma and stuff. The aggregates, the 5 aggregates, and the death lord, death itself obviously is going to put an end to this life spiritual path. But Machik came up with 4 more. To give Dapa Sangye credit, he mentions 3 of them, and they are mentioned by other teachings. But Machik got the tangible devil, the intangible devil, what I translate as exaltation, which is maybe an iffy translation, and then what I translate is inflation, which is a brilliant translation. So tangible devil is a physical thing that's standing in your way, that's causing an obstacle to your path towards spirit, to your parents' spiritual path. So that's sickness, that's real demons and things, that's enemies, war, like soon to be whatever, guard or something coming after you. And that intangible ones are your own emotions and your own responses to all those different things that cause you to stop pursuing your practice. Exaltation is really when you get too happy about yourself and your practice. When you think, wow, that was great. I didn't have a thought for like 1 second. I'm really making progress. But or even special powers that they're always hoping for, right? These so the spiritual powers that is really, I'm afraid, sometimes worried that was the whole Dharma. People trying to get special powers. My daughter, when she discovered that you didn't actually get real powers like Superman and all those, was like devastated. She was like 10 or something. I mean, it's really, we want them and we don't get them. But if we get them, we get super happy and that ruins it. So that's the devil of exaltation. Inflation is by far the most interesting. A lot of times it's sort of an equivalent to self-clinging, and it's sort of an equivalent to sort of pride or narcissism, but it actually has the words like puffed up, which is, if you think of like you puff up like some animals, because you don't want to realize that you're not there. It's like a bully, and we're so familiar now with bully, which is really being insecure. Nobody's a bully that's secure in themselves. You're a bully because you're insecure, so you puff out and you become this like giant orange monster. And that's inflation, and I think for usually the terms of psychology don't quite fit. Like ego is not exactly the same as clinging to self and so on, but it really, the ego inflation is perfect in this case. It describes it, I think, perfectly, except for they usually think it's because you're insecure, because I don't know, you're short or you're fat or you're whatever. This case, it's insecure because you sense that maybe you're not really a solid, real person in there. And so we're all inflated. We inflate, we're bullies, we're inflating ourselves constantly to avoid noticing that, you know, we're not big and important and solid and real and single. Single, I mean, yeah, that's single too, but also, you know, an entity that exists in and of itself. So that's inflation. That's the fourth one. And that's the ground of all of them. And both Machik and Machik does a brilliant, I think, brilliant, well, it's not Machik, but whoever wrote Machik's complete explanation, the description of that particular one is really great, because you can't give it up, because basically it's not different than your intrinsic awareness. You can't actually get rid of the inflation, but you can, you know, you need, well, it's too complicated to explain with the Tibetan ways, like Jangjay and Jangjun, you know, all that kind of stuff. But, and then he says too, those second two of those two, both the exaltation and the inflation, don't try and mess with those at first. Just do the first two, because you can't take the ground of everything out. You can't take basic awareness away. You can't try and destroy awareness and so, you know, in our war on ego, which is sometimes, or ego assassin, some Lama describes himself as, you don't want to try and assassinate your innate awareness. But innate awareness and innate confusion are just so close. You know, they're the same. They're co-immersion. That's where that word came in Chichepa. So that's a description of that. And then you move on to that. But they say that that's quite an advanced thing. But the Chöd practice in itself strikes me as very advanced. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I do. I spend all my time avoiding difficult situations. Fighting the chaos. Isn't that life? Like holding back the chaos. And that's not an instruction that should. I find it nearly impossible to really take this, like literally these instructions of facing your worst fears. I'm not, you know, I don't know. So what do y'all think? Anybody?
I think take little steps, you know.
Little steps.
Yeah, don't be so gung ho. I'm going to do the big thing. Because
Yeah.
that's coming from the wrong place to begin with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I think-
That could have been Jamyang Gönpo that said that. Yeah. It's
I think our day-to-day life, there's all kinds of things that we do want to, you know, we shy away from,
yeah.
and that there are also opportunities. So there was always a time to open up the door a little bit.
What's a little thing that we could start with?
Somebody who's irritating,
Yeah. Just hang
and
out with
just
them.
being willing to communicate with them.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. No, but yeah, totally, yeah,
Can I throw out a few questions?
sure, yes.
Zoom
Mhm.
reality. One person's asking, is it truly important that we're physically present in scary environments? It seems like our minds could contract lots of things that would put us in a state of mind of fearful demons, of those thoughts, and like death, etc. So how important is the physical environment in doing the practice?
Well, that's a good question. As I've been saying, I think you don't want to just, I don't think it's for a really advanced practice. Yes, I think it's really good because you might be too sophisticated in your practice to, you know, be scared enough from normal circumstances, like staying at home in the daytime and practicing. But you don't want to go, you know, to those scary places unless you feel pretty confident in your understanding of lack of self, And again, as I just said, the two first devils of tangible and intangible, that's plenty to deal with. Sickness, damn, or old age, or actual traffic jam, or things like that. There's plenty to work with. So ultimately, it's important, but and kind of like what Gary was saying, they're all over the place, and we have things constantly happening that we don't want to deal with, that we have to. But that's a little different than going out and seeking them. If you go to a scary haunted place, you're going and seeking out trouble. You're trouble looking for trouble. Yeah. And that's it.
Oh, there's lots more questions, but
Oh,
no, it's,
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Take a few more. Yeah.
one question that came in before was about the 4 Maras and the 4 demons and the connection there. Wondering
Different
there's another set
translators.
of-
Yeah. No.
Another set of Maras and
No. It's just me translating Mara as devil and other people translating it as demon.
okay.
But like I said at the beginning, I translate demon for Dre, which is, I think, more closer.
Mm.
And devil is a really abstract, devilry or or evil.
Mm.
Evil, so whereas demon is pretty like, and there's a lot of demons, a lot more than 4. There's a whole bunch of categories of demons. And there's demons, different ones in every valley and every. Greg knows more. It's hard to assign names to all the demons that come up in the Chöd practice.
What about this practice you mentioned, doing all this shit with demons that you don't actually believe?
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit more about that? How to do the practice, or how to think about it?
Yeah, okay, so like I said, I wonder about that, like, should we conjure up demons we don't believe in just to be able to do this practice? Or, maybe one option would be, maybe we'd find out we do really scared of demons. That's, something that can happen, I suppose. And I was amazed. I could take a survey, but I used to, in every class that I ended up teaching, I always survey who believes in demon, who thinks they've seen or experienced a demon, and about half of every class would say yes. So it may not be as archaic as we think, but certainly every culture in the past had them. So it might tap into a very archetypal kind of fear that we do have. So I would say, you try it out, but I think the advice of that one thing I read of like, wouldn't it be better? They may or may not exist. So wouldn't it make more sense to work with your different, clinging and attachments and hate and all these horrible other things that are based on fear, and getting to the bottom of those by really facing what is the fear behind them. I think we could apply Chöd practice to that. That would be probably faster and smarter, maybe. I don't know. That's what I think. I've tried to get scared of, deep spirits, and I haven't succeeded yet. I'm scared of a lot of other things.
Fun to be scared of these days.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Is that okay? So do you think that the Charya Chöd kind of morphed into the Chöd, the seventh Chöd? Like the terminology?
Yeah, that's what I kind of think. Having seen like exact texts with, to both of them, I think first it was this, testing your experience of emptiness or compassion or whatever, and then because it's a common Tibetan term that's used in all these different places, I think they just started spelling it that way. And then the integration of the practice of chopping up the body and cooking it or, arranging it for the demons and stuff. There's a whole thing of what each kind likes. And let me just add something that I kind of forgot that's a little bit tangential, but the idea of feeding the very things that we normally would like totally want to avoid is such a mom thing, right? It's such a Jewish mom thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. And I think that's one of the marvelous things about Machik's Chöd is it's not only a female lineage and mother lineage, and her whole inspiration is from Prajnaparamita Ma, the mother, the perfection of wisdom, which is often embodied in female form, certainly in Tibet and starting in India. And then her other various conversations with Tara. So, it's just seeping with momness and femaleness. That's kind of amazing. It's an amazing concept. Only a mom would ever even think of that. Don't you think? Feeding? Like babies changing their, I don't know, like you have to, I've often thought that. They did a story, is it Atisha that licks the maggots off the dog, and that's supposed to be his great big realization, was it?
Sangha.
A sangha, that's right, a sangha. Big deal. Anyone that's had a baby is like, yeah, you could do that. You would totally do that. It's very amazing that way, I think. So that's quite a, just conceptually. And then feeding them with your own body, that's also kind of a mom thing.
It is kind of a mom thing.
Right? So, yeah, it is an amazing practice. I don't think there's anything quite like it.
Is there anything like it in other traditions? I'm not familiar, so Indian practices or other kinds of.
I don't think I know the answer to that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of body, just, asceticism, like in Indian religions that are pretty intense. And then Native American as well, where pain and deprivation of the body is considered a path to realization. But yeah, not quite the same. Yeah.
I just read in the Shamanic Voices by John Halifax, and one of the healing ceremonies that a shaman did was to cut off their own head and put it, I don't know, somewhere where everyone could see it, and have parts of his body used so that the person could get healed.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You want to read that job description before you.
That's right today.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of Buddhist stories in Indian stories of, great saints cutting off their head and offering it, or, the famous one of the cutting one arm, like he cuts.
Dharma's disciple Hakuin.
No, it was the one where they cut. Someone asks for it's a bodhisattva in India, not asks for the right hand, asks for give me your right hand, and he cuts it off and he hands it to him with his left hand. And it was like, how rude, you handed it to me with your left hand, but you're not supposed to do stuff with it. So, yeah, who was that?
I think it might have been Shariputra trying to debut as a bodhisattva, taking his vow back.
Oh, yeah, that is it. That, I think you're right. Yeah, that's it. And he kind of said, yeah, sentient beings are gonna be like this, forget it. Yeah.
How about harakiri?
Harakiri. Oh, yeah, well, well, if they're doing it, I don't think they're like, because they lost honor. Isn't that what usually? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more associated with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a little crazy.
That might
Where do you go?
be exaltation and the inflation.
So, yeah, the exaltation devil. Yeah, Bob.
So Sarah, when I was staying at Nagi Gompa, and I had this little room overlooking the courtyard of the old Iron Gönpo there. And the nuns would practice,
Together, yeah.
good practice there. And so I could listen to it all the time because I was doing retreat there. But it was so melodic,
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah,
and
it's
sweet.
transporting, yeah.
And I
There's
just
even
wondered,
dances.
is that
There's the.
did it morph in a certain way to become, because you would think if you were expressing what Chöd is about,
It wouldn't be.
it wouldn't be so sweet and lovely and soothing and pleasant.
Interesting.
If you
It
act-
reminds me of a section, I might even. Can you stand for me to read? Where also you're not supposed, you know how there's teachings about the hideousness of the body and its pus and blood and stuff. That is not what you're offering to the demons. You're supposed to think of yourself as, really like plump and oily, and, like a big steak or, something, and you're not supposed to offer you're cast out, like, I don't like my body anyway, it's not that. And so it kind of reminds me of that. It's a beautiful, you blow the horn and you attract you call them, come from over the mountains, and you call them all on the thigh bone. It's an interesting thing. It's kind of like the beauty of Dia de los Muertos, it's kind of, that's beautiful too, and it's all about death.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it became a group practice. I mean, we did in retreat, we did it every night on our own, but when we did the full thing, it was a whole month of practicing together. That's so just the exact same thing you heard there, actually. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how beautiful we're saying, but yeah, that's an interesting point, Bob. And I don't know. It's another contrast of another extremes of, but it definitely makes it an enjoyable practice. Maybe people wouldn't do it otherwise.
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, what else? Is that it?
Are we coming to the end?
If there's no
We're
more,
over the top.
I can, I did 5 hefty books on.
Well, we can do
I
another
can
next
talk
and you
more.
can
No.
talk more.
We'll change subjects next time.
Questions? Yes. How, just kind of, yes. In the examples of like, okay, maybe we do it in like baby steps, like out in the world that we experience.
Or at home and you're
Or at
safe,
home.
when you learn something, yeah.
How would that? Oh, okay, maybe I don't need to ask this question, but I was just wondering how that could look if
Yeah.
we were to do like a small version.
Well, if you like the idea of the ritual, which takes a while for people to learn, but it does definitely have an effect. And in the drum, the beat of a drum, which definitely is related to the like bone practices of drums and shamanic practices, it does do something to you. That rhythm, and if you like that kind of practice, you can do it at home, and then it all depends on your imagination, what you can imagine. And that's why later writers, starting with Rangjung Dorje, third Karmapa, and then like right up to Jamyang Gönpo and everybody else, just kept developing more intricate visualizations to help you. And also, I was gonna say this, to not get bored, just like the complexity of deity practice. I mean, they're all the same. You can just visualize Tara, she's fine, but or you could have like 12 arm Gala Chakra, however many he has, where every joint is a different color, and it's for your samadhi, it's for your focus, and also not to get bored with just plain old green Tara. I'm sorry, she's wonderful. I thought I was visualizing Kamala Harris's green Tara the whole time, but anyway, it didn't work. But the more complex it is, it helps you. It makes it interesting. It's like you're running this like horror movie in your mind, right? And so it's a aid. But if you don't like the extra, all the stuff with the rituals. That's why I had planned. And it was to do a 7-day actual retreat based on the 7-day retreat practice. I was going to do a Tara mandala, but I chickened out or something. And maybe next year when the book comes out. And in that case, it was going to be interesting because there is only anything to do with ritual on the first day.
Wow.
And all the rest. And there's no deities and there's no, stuff. It's basically just sitting with your mind, with your, in the spirit of Chöd or something. So I would say, and especially for us also living in suburbs or whatever, you can't really go crazy with bells and things and conlinks and, so, I mean, I stopped using instruments actually at all because of neighbors. Simply, so it kind of depends, but it definitely, I mean, we practiced it in our little cells, totally safe. No intrusion was almost impossible for someone to get through all the gates and bars and through your, isolation retreat. So, but maybe it didn't totally work as well as if, you're out more. So it just depends. And it makes a great ritual to do in a group, like you were saying. It's a wonderful practice to do. It's very powerful.
So is it ever associated with dark retreat?
No, it's not. That's a whole different approach. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting though, because people might be afraid of the dark.
Yeah. And there you really do start hallucinating, I think so. They should have
Yeah, sure.
started in Lineage. Bob's Lineage. Dark Chöd retreat. Not that I know of. It could have happened.
Well,
Okay.
questions
I think.
or comments?
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
And I hope I didn't ramble on too much.
Never.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's great to see people and to kind of, talk about my craft and sullen art.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.